Have you ever reached out for help when you were drowning, only to be met with silence? That crushing moment when you realize the people you thought would be there simply aren't. It's not just loneliness, it's the kind of pain that rewires how you see the world, how you see yourself. But here's what nobody tells you. Sometimes the absence of help isn't rejection, it's redirection. What if the people who ignored you weren't abandoning you, but unknowingly pushing you toward the one person who could truly save you? The story you're about to hear will change how you see every unanswered call for help in your life. Daniel sat on the edge of his bed at 2 a.m, staring at his phone. The screen was still lit from the last message he'd sent 3 hours ago. No reply. He scrolled up through the conversation, reading his own words back to himself. They felt desperate now, pathetic even. He'd tried to keep it light at first, casual, like he wasn't falling apart. But by the third message, the mask had slipped. He'd told his best friend since college that he didn't know how much longer he could keep going like this, that the weight in his chest hadn't lifted in weeks, that he was scared of his own thoughts. The message had been read at 11:14. It was now past 2. Daniel set the phone face down on the nightstand and lay back, staring at the ceiling. The apartment was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the occasional car passing outside. He used to like the quiet. Now it felt like it was swallowing him whole. He thought about calling his brother, but they hadn't spoken in months, not since the argument at their mother's birthday dinner. He thought about reaching out to his co-worker, the one who always seemed cheerful, always asked how his weekend was. But what would he even say? They weren't close like that. And besides, people at work didn't need to know he was unraveling. So he did nothing. He just lay there, feeling the hours stretch out like an endless road with no destination. The next morning, Daniel went to work. He smiled when he was supposed to, laughed at the right moments, responded to emails with the same professional tone he always used. Nobody noticed. Or maybe they did, and they just didn't care enough to ask. He wasn't sure which possibility hurt more. At lunch, he sat alone in his car and stared at his phone again. Still no reply. He opened the message thread with another friend, someone he used to grab drinks with on Fridays. They hadn't talked in a while, but maybe that didn't matter. Maybe if he just explained what was happening, they'd understand. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He typed a sentence, deleted it, typed another. Finally, he just wrote, "Hey, been a rough few weeks. You around to talk?" He hit send before he could second-guess it. Hours passed. No response. By the time Daniel got home that evening, something inside him had shifted. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was colder than that. A kind of resignation. He'd spent so much of his life believing that people were good, that friendships mattered, that if you were there for others, they'd be there for you. But the evidence was piling up, and it all pointed in one direction. When it really mattered, when the lights went out and the noise stopped, you were on your own. He made himself dinner, a simple pasta dish he didn't taste. He ate in front of the television, some show he wasn't watching. The room felt too big. The silence felt too loud. He thought about texting someone else, anyone, but the idea exhausted him. What was the point? He'd only be setting himself up for more of the same. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He paced his apartment, moving from room to room like a ghost haunting his own life. At some point, he ended up standing in front of the bathroom mirror, looking at himself under the harsh fluorescent light. He barely recognized the person staring back. When had his eyes started looking so hollow? When had his face become so drawn? He thought about the version of himself from 5 years ago. That Daniel had been full of plans, ambitions, hope. He'd believed things would work out if he just kept moving forward. But life had a way of grinding you down, didn't it? One disappointment at a time, one unanswered message at a time. The weekend came, and Daniel didn't leave his apartment. He told himself he just needed rest, but really, he didn't have anywhere to go. No one had called. No one had checked in. The silence from his friends was louder than anything they could have said. On Sunday afternoon, as the light outside started to fade, Daniel sat on his couch and realized something. He was angry. Not at them, exactly, at himself. for needing people, for being weak enough to ask for help in the first place. Strong people didn't need anyone, they figured it out on their own. They didn't send desperate messages at midnight and wait by their phones like a fool. He decided, right then, that he was done reaching out. If people wanted to be in his life, they could make the effort. He was tired of being the one who cared more, who tried harder, who ended up hurt. Monday morning arrived like a punishment. Daniel dragged himself out of bed and went through the motions of getting ready for work. As he stood at the bathroom sink, brushing his teeth, his phone buzzed on the counter. For a split second, his heart jumped. Maybe someone had finally replied. Maybe someone cared after all. It was a notification from his bank. A bill was due. He laughed, a bitter sound that echoed off the tiles. Of course. But as he picked up his phone to dismiss the notification, he saw something else. A text from a number he didn't recognize. He opened it, expecting spam. Instead it said, "Hi Daniel, this is Ruth from the community center. I know we only met briefly a few months ago, but I've been thinking about you. I'm not sure why, honestly, just felt like I should reach out. I hope you're doing okay. If you ever want to grab coffee or just talk, I'm around. No pressure." Daniel stared at the message. Ruth. He vaguely remembered her. She'd been volunteering at the center when he'd gone there to donate some old clothes. They'd chatted for maybe 10 minutes. She'd been kind, genuinely interested in what he did for work, laughing at his awkward jokes. But that had been months ago. Why would she be reaching out now? He didn't respond right away. Part of him wanted to delete it, to add it to the pile of things that didn't matter. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the timing. Maybe it was the fact that she said she'd been thinking about him for no reason. Maybe it was just that he was too tired to keep his walls up. That evening, after another long day of pretending, Daniel texted her back. He kept it simple. "Hey Ruth, thanks for reaching out. I'd actually really like to talk, if you're serious about that coffee." Her response came within minutes. "Absolutely. How's tomorrow afternoon? There's a place near the park, if that works." The next day, Daniel met Ruth at a small cafe with big windows and plants hanging from the ceiling. She was already there when he arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of her. She smiled when she saw him, the kind of smile that reached her eyes. "I ordered you a coffee," she said, "but I realized I have no idea how you take it, so I got cream and sugar on the side just in case." They talked for over 2 hours. At first, Daniel kept things surface level, the way he always did. But Ruth had a way of asking questions that felt genuine, not intrusive. She listened without interrupting. She didn't offer empty platitudes or try to fix him. She just listened. Eventually, Daniel found himself telling her things he hadn't told anyone, about the weight he'd been carrying, about the silence from his friends, about how alone he'd felt, even in a city full of people. Ruth didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. She just nodded, her expression soft with understanding. "I've been there," she said quietly. "Not the exact same situation, but that feeling of reaching out and getting nothing back. It's devastating. It makes you feel invisible." "Yeah," Daniel said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's exactly it." "But here's what I learned," Ruth continued. "Sometimes the people we think should be there for us aren't capable of it. Not because they're bad people, but because they're dealing with their own stuff. Or maybe the relationship wasn't as deep as we thought. And that hurts. But it also clears space." "Space for what?" Daniel asked. "For the right people," she said. "The ones who show up not because you're fun or successful or easy to be around, but because they see you, really see you. Those people are rare, but they're out there." Daniel felt something crack open inside him. Not in a breaking way, in a thawing way. Over the next few weeks, Daniel and Ruth met several more times. She introduced him to a few people from her circle, kind, grounded individuals who didn't demand anything from him. Slowly, carefully, Daniel started to rebuild. Not the life he'd had before, but something new, something quieter, more intentional. He learned that being alone and being lonely weren't the same thing. He learned that some relationships are meant to fade, and that's not a failure. He learned that asking for help wasn't weakness, it was courage. But he also learned to be more careful about who he asked. One evening, months later, Daniel sat in his apartment again, but this time the silence didn't feel suffocating. It felt peaceful. His phone buzzed, a message from Ruth, asking if he wanted to join her and some friends for dinner that weekend. He smiled and typed back, "I'd love to." As he set his phone down, Daniel thought about that night when no one had responded, the night he'd felt most alone. He used to think of it as the worst moment of his life, but now he wasn't so sure. Because if his friends had answered, if they'd given him just enough to keep going the way he was, he might never have found Ruth. He might never have learned what real connection felt like. Sometimes the silence isn't the end. Sometimes it's the reset, the uncomfortable space where the wrong things fall away so the right things can find you. Daniel hadn't needed his old friends to show up. He'd needed to stop waiting for them so he could see who was actually there. And in the end, that made all the difference.